javelins, freelancers, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to a special episode of AnthemCast. Why is it special? I'm by myself, but that's okay. Hopefully we can spend some time this evening talking a little bit about what's been going on in the world of Anthem. As I mentioned, I am one of your hosts, Ogaz, and I want to explore a little bit what the community's been up to, conversations in Reddit, and importantly, the tweets from Mark Darrah in particular in the last week. With not much news coming out of BioWare, and really in general on Reddit or elsewhere, it's probably been a quieter week in conversation, though it has not been any much quieter in our Discord. If you are interested in the conversation and you haven't jumped in, be sure to check that out, which is discord.anthemuniverse.com. And whilst it has been a quieter week, they've been talking about lore, been talking about javelin builds, I've been talking about a lot of the usual things actually that we've been, exploring over the last few months. And in particular, the Legion of Dawn and what that's going to look like in the game. Helena Tarsus, Fort Tarsus, and I guess the mystery that we're seeing behind it. It's exciting what's happening in the community right now. As I mentioned, we've got that going on. We've got artists all over the place. We've got Lazar, of course, on Twitter pumping out some really impressive stuff. Our good friends over at Anthem Insider making some really top-notch quality stuff as well. And of course, our guys within the Discord, our hardworking mods in terms of Njex, Moxie, Ald, and a few of the guys that have been there working so hard, along with some of the staples like Jude and a few of the other guys in there, have been really contributing to the conversation. Bad Badger in particular has been making some really interesting stories that we're going to talk about shortly in the universe, and it's just been a really interesting time considering we've got not a lot going on from the BioWare side. So I guess I just want to say, given the opportunity, I'm kind of by myself tonight. It's a big thanks to everyone that's really been part of what we've been working towards here at Anthem Universe. So be sure to stick around because there's plenty more to come. In particular, if you're interested in something different, something fresh, jump in to the latest article that we will be posting in the next 24 hours from Anthem Universe, and it's a bit of an analysis, if you will, of the Anthem game music. So you can check that out at anthemuniverse.com, and of course check the accompanying video for it if you prefer. And it's a good chance for us to take a look at something that really hasn't really been discussed much. So do check that out if you're interested. But I guess in the meantime, as I mentioned, there hasn't been a lot of news, but the bulk of the news this week has really come out of the tweets from Mark Darrah. And there's a whole bunch here. There's probably about 15 or so that I wanted to skim through quickly. So I don't expect we'll have a full-on episode tonight, I'm afraid. You're going to have to put up with me for a while, though. I won't let you go too easy. But it's been a hell of a day here. I went shopping today, which was very exciting. I bought lamps, which was extra exciting. And I put the kids to sleep. So it's been a really busy, exciting, awesome day. I'm sure those with kids out there probably know what I'm talking about, but or houses for that matter. So anyway, as I mentioned, the tweets themselves from Mike Darrah have been interesting. There's been a few, not revelations, some points that we knew already, but some things that are worth discussing. Now, the first tweet that we've got here to talk to is the response from Mark Darrah in regards to how scaling works. Now, of course, scaling is one of those things in RPGs, particularly in these, I guess, light RPGs or RPG lights that we talk about, such as Division and Destiny, which is important. In particular, Ben Irving made some really good points in that gameplay trailer about how the game scales to you. So this tweet was interesting to me, and it says very specifically, as I mentioned, 4 players will be easier, but there will be an adjustment to group size. So there will be some sort of scaling here, some sort of scaling of difficulty if you are entering a match and of course you have less than the traditional player count. But it seems as though the goal or the intent of BioWare, which hasn't really changed to be fair from the beginning philosophy, is to focus and maintain on that 4-player centric design. It's exciting. I mean, I know for some people who are solo players that gets a bit frustrating or they feel a bit put off by it. But look, I mean, it's a catch-22. You want to build something that really draws people together, that really creates excitement and interest. But at the same time, you want to cater for the love of the old. And Binary and I have spoken about this on the previous episodes. It's it is a catch-22. It's a conundrum that BioWare have. If you focus too heavy on the single player that we know about, particularly that a lot of BioWare fans traditionally might like, then you, I guess, move down that path of alienating the MMO light or the RPG light elements of the game that people are dying for and interested in. So I think it's a good move that they're keeping that, I think, that focus and that philosophy. We'll just have to wait and see how well that scaling works. As I said, they did make a big sale of that, particularly Ben Irving talking about, I think the example he used, if you remember, was the entrance of a Storm class that was level 1 playing with a bunch of level 30 characters and were able to enter into the game immediately, drop straight in, and just have at it. And as someone in some of these games, to be honest with you, I've been someone who's that, you get that frustration when you try to join a game or try to join an existing game and you can't get in. I think that's going to be a good maneuver. So anyway, that was that last tweet. The next one we saw was talking about story missions. And Mark here mentioned you can play the story missions solo if you wish. So as a counterpoint to that a moment ago, you can still play, of course, as a solo, and it will scale for you. Though, as I said, and as Mark highlighted, I still think that there's this preference and interest. There's still this preference and interest that they've got in maintaining 4 players in the story where possible. He did mention another point, a third tweet here, which says strongholds are not campaign missions, but high difficulty experiences. Now, this is not new, but if you are familiar with strongholds, we're starting to see that language come out more and more since E3. The comparison that John Warner has made with strongholds has always been dungeons, and being a big Diablo fan, I think that just makes things extra exciting for us, knowing that John loves his Diablo. So yeah, there it is. Strongholds are not campaign missions, but they're considered high difficulty experiences. So I suppose we can expect that strongholds will become a significant part of Endgame. I'm guessing and hoping in our conversations so far that there's going to be more and varied exercises. I'm really excited just to think about the variations to the environment and the weather. Now, they did mention in previous conversations that the environment geometry of the land will not change. However, that does not mean the weather and other areas and environmental effects can't be changed and modified, particularly with the relics in the land and the Anthem of Creation that we have to work with. That could be something really interesting. Now, another great tweet. This was a special one. I like this. And it's, if I ask really, really nicely, will Anthem be released like right now? That emphasis of the word like before right now just gives me a little bit of a cringe. But of course, the answer from Mark was no. Unfortunately not. The game will not be released right now if you ask really nicely. And to be perfectly fair, I don't think we'd want to see it right now. I think we'd rather BioWare work on what they're working on and make this something special for February. Of course, we might see more, well, no doubt we will, at Gamescom and probably PAX West in the very short future. Another tweet here was, if you are linked to others and return to Tarsus. So this is more about the idea that if you are in a group, you're already linked up and you're teamed up, and you go back to Fort Tarsus, which we know is that, single player experience. Your Fort Tarsus is your story. It goes back to that value proposition that they brought up earlier. Our world, my story. So my story is Fort Tarsus. Even when you go to pursue my story back at Fort Tarsus and you are in a group, you will stay in that group. So that's kind of reassuring. I mean, I guess it just creates a sense of convenience. I don't think it would have been a deal breaker, but it makes things a little bit easier if you've gone back to Tarsus, that you can simply return to your group that you were already engaged with. So I'd suspect your voice chat, your team chat, whatever that might be on the platform you're using, will continue as normal. Another tweet here was really interesting. Well, I mean, not really interesting. It was moderately interesting, but certainly something we knew already was that Anthem will support multiple GPUs, in particular Crossfire and SLI. Again, we knew this already because the game systems used at E3 were actually PCs running on SLI NVIDIA cards using a Xbox controller. So yeah, nothing new, but if you are a PC nerd, you know what that means. Essentially, it means you can bridge two cards that will run in performance together, increase that performance based on what you've got, and therefore, of course, be able to run at high resolutions with high performance. To be fair, it's not a feature that's supported well throughout the industry. Not all games support it, and games do specifically have to be written for that type of architecture to occur. But it's good to know that if you've got that, if you've got the grunt, I know I won't be. I think I'll be sporting probably a 1080 standard, 1080 Ti if I can by that date. Might do a little upgrade, but by no means, is it a big impact to you if you don't. But if you've got the hardware and you've got the grunt, all the more power to you. The next tweet on the agenda was subtitles. It is being confirmed, sadly, that the Anthem will not have Norwegian subtitles. Sorry, Norwegian fans, but you're not getting any subtitles, at least at launch. Maybe you can work on those beyond game launch, but we'll see. Additionally, I have some sad news for our Czech friends. Sadly as well, Mark did confirm that the Czech subtitles will not be available at launch as well. It's an interesting point. I've worked with a few developers with some other games. In particular, one springs to mind, which is Battalion 1944. I've done some community work with them in the past, and that's Bulkhead Interactive. And they had, it's a different conversation because they're a much smaller company, literally a very, very tiny studio. But the interesting part or challenge that they had was that localization is difficult. It's actually quite expensive. It's very time consuming, and quality control, of course, has to be kept there as well. So I don't expect it's probably a high priority for them in the early days. If you are someone who has done translation in the past, whether it be for games or media, I would strongly encourage you to reach out. Again, they may be interested, they may not be interested, but in my experience, at least working with Bulkhead, I notice is that we've actually had a lot of people offer Spanish language and other different languages and localizations to actually do the full translation and support the brand. And in some cases, doing it sort of freelance. Some people offering it to do it free of charge. And I know that does sort of bring into some questions about work and labor and of course quality assurance. But yeah, it might be something to think about. If you've got the skill sets of translation, reach out to studios because they're often looking for opportunities and insights into that. And it is a costly exercise for them as a business. So it's sad that it won't be there, but Norwegian and Czech friends, I'm sure you'll be okay in the short term. Hopefully you'll be able to see some love from there in the future. The next tweet from Mark was about gear, and again, it's not something that's new, I think, for most of us, but if you are fresh to the conversation, gear relates to javelins. So your gear is not about your pilot or your freelancer, so to speak. It is about your javelin. You can use those across your different exosuits. Mods will have compatibilities across your exosuits, which is basically brings us back to, wow, I mean, episode 1, a year ago, Binary and I were sitting here talking about chassis. We use the term chassis for javelins, and it really seems like that's come to fruition. For example, one of the tweets talked about Colossus as being a chassis, and I think Mark was literally saying, think of the model of a Colossus, for example, as an empty canvas, a chassis that you build upon and then create and add to. So looking forward to some of that, of course, with our javelins. The next one, again, was something that's, again, not brand new. We had seen this before, but loot, of course, will be instanced. Now, we do know that. If you're not sure what that means, there was a few debates and discussions I noticed on Twitter. Now, if you don't know what that actually means, what we're saying is that loot will be instanced. So that means that your game world will receive a certain type of loot. Now, that loot may be similar or slightly different to the other person's world, but your loot will appear in your world. So no one else will be able to take the loot that you see. Every time someone receives loot, it'll be instanced to their game environment and to their current gameplay situation. But that's, again, something that's probably not new for most of you, but is a good thing. You don't really want people stealing your loot. It kind of sucks, especially in this sort of game. BioWare's not really going for that type of competitive scenario, at least not this stage. Another point that Mark raised, which is very interesting, is around blueprints. Now, again, if you're new to that conversation, of course, blueprints is the idea that you'll be able to essentially craft, build, adjust, and modify weapons using a set of instructions, or in this case, blueprints. If you're familiar with the Division does that very well. Probably didn't do it too well in the beginning, if anyone was around the beginning of the Division, but it is something that's become quite familiar and we're used to. So it's a little bit exciting. It does tell us that there's some crafting and modifying that's going to happen in the game. We kind of knew that already with previous information, but it is a nice reinforcement that we're going to have some sort of guidance, some instruction that we can use with it. The next tweet on the agenda was third person, and again, something that we're reasonably familiar with, but in the last week it was confirmed again that the entire game you are playing in third person. Remember, we are in first person inside Tarsus. So my story is your first person experience at Tarsus. Our world is your third person experience, whether it's being played solo or with your team. Another tweet there was about auction houses, and no, there will be no auction houses. There's pros and cons to that. I think we can agree auction houses have a place in many games. They're downright filthy in others, but by and large, they can be very useful if you want to acquire, buy certain elements of a game, weapons or gear from other players who have managed to obtain them. It does bring in some questionable challenges around monetary currency and probably even philosophically speaking, the ethics of it around the game as well. But I'm kind of pleased, actually. I can do without the auction house. I'd like to just earn my way and to know how I experience the game and to earn what I work towards. Now, this is a very interesting piece. This next tweet is something I think that's important for everyone to reflect on, and that is the term freelancer. Now, Mark this week spoke about Lancer being the broader term and freelancer being a subset. So I guess what that tells us is that the Lancer is actually our core as a pilot. So everyone is a Lancer if you are piloting these javelins. But there are variations to those lancers. So the question then beckons that we've been talking about freelancers a lot. Are we all lancers, or are we all not free? What does the free connotation make? So what does the free word, I guess, connotate? Logically, it implies that those lancers of a different ilk, in this case, free, of a free guard, of a free life, perhaps unique to ourselves. Not too sure exactly right now, but as we can see, it's very interesting that the term Lancer is the broader term, and we are freelancers. So we're all Lancers in one way. Some of us are freelancers. What does that mean? Does the Dominion part of that conversation, in terms of that terminology, do they have their own subset of Lancer conversation as well that they use, nomenclature, etc.? I'm not sure, but it's something that I think was new and fresh this week that we really didn't have much else about. Now, in addition to that, there's actually a good point here which I'd forgotten. In a separate tweet, it was mentioned that Sentinels are also piloted by Lancers. So the Sentinels, if you remember, are the police guards, if you will. You remember we first saw them over a year ago at E3 2017 in that first trailer, and of course we've seen them again since in 2018 when we see the first person view in the 2018 trailer of the Sentinels in full action. So yeah, looks like they are guards of Fort Tarsus. They are called Sentinels, we know that, but we've also been told that they are piloted by Lancers. So again, sort of linking to that point before, we are all Lancers in some way. Perhaps the Lancers and the Sentinels are a different ilk, different breed. Maybe they are trained, maybe they are old school, maybe they are guards, maybe like a knighthood element. They have to be sort of accredited to be a Sentinel. And the freelancers are more who we will be, in terms of the guys willing to cross the wall, willing to risk it all. Now, another point here that was raised on Twitter is when you join a group in mission, your progress is for everyone. Now, I think that was confirmed previously, but it is another point to remember. So if you join a group in mission, your progress is for everyone. So that means, obviously, if you are partway through or if you join someone else's story and they're further through the campaign than you are, you will get recognition for the completion of that mission, not just the lead character or the lead person in the group. Not a massive deal right now for conversation, but again, something interesting. Another point again, which is built on our pace and our rate of flight, is about groups. So we're not going to be able to fly faster than each other. The ability to upgrade how fast you fly will not be there, and that's purely because BioWare, and as Mark Darrah has mentioned here, he wants groups to stick together. And I think that's important. It's an important part of this game. They've mentioned, as per the tweets earlier this evening that I've mentioned, group mentality, 4-player co-op is their underpinning. It is the philosophy of what they're doing. It would make zero sense for them to allow you the ability to fly ahead from the group, at least faster than the typical rate that we've seen in the trailers. So don't expect to be able to upgrade that, and I think that makes sense. I agree with that, and I think we can also agree that it's probably a good idea. I'm pretty sure all of you have played at one point in your life with the guy that just wants to go everywhere and to go into every cave and to every hidden parcel of the map to try and find something awesome. So you're going to have to deal with that. But the other thing at least you won't have to deal with is the Leroy Jenkins of the group, who will choose to fly like a maniac at 300,000 kilometers per hour and try to complete the stronghold ahead of you. Well, again, hopefully not. The stronghold are meant to be higher difficulty experiences, so it's probably not going to happen. And more than likely, of course, as we said there, he or she would not be able to fly ahead anyway because of that ability is removed. So that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. Keep the javelins the same pace. I'm not fussed with that whatsoever. Ultimates. Now, another tweet that came out from Mark Darrah was about ultimates, and in particular, changeability of those. It has been confirmed that you won't be able to change your ultimates at launch. So there's no way you'll be able to adjust, tweak, or configure those ultimates in the early stages, at least at launch. I suspect we might start to see more from that down the track. But again, something to look out for. Another thing confirmed, which is what was expected, was no friendly fire. So friendly fire is off. Again, that is not new. We've been told that in the past. But one point, and a particular good question from this tweet here, was about the bullets through allies. Will they prove the sponge that you need or don't need to block your fire? And I think Mark is saying at this point, those allies do actually absorb bullets, so that you won't be able to just shoot through your allies, which I know sounds kind of strange anyway, but in some games it's not so odd. But there you go. That's an important confirmation from Mark. This one is interesting. From the dark soul of Trump the Antichrist, at Soul Antichrist says, Anthem is trash. Boycott Anthem. MEA fans stripped of DLC because of this game. Over 1 million pledges and growing. Let's get BioWare shut down. Wow. Dude's got problems, but hopefully he's trolling. But man, Soul Antichrist, you are trolling. Anyway, moving on to the last one of the evening, and it's from Shadow NZX. And he asked the question, can all 4 javelins merge into one, for example, like Devastator from Transformers? Dude, that's a tweet of the week. I'm all on that. I'd love to see some javelins joining for some Devastator action. Probably wouldn't work so well in the ethos of the story that we know so far. Good question though, why not? Sadly, most sadly, the answer is no. Mark Darrah said no, you will not be able to combine Constructicons and Stunticons and aerial bots and Devastators together, unfortunately. So, sad news, but again, good question. A little bit of silliness doesn't hurt, particularly in the lead up to Gamescom. And boy, is it coming. Guys, we are not far out from Gamescom. It is a very short time away. And now, of course, if you want to keep following Anthem Universe to keep your eye on what's happening from Gamescom, please make sure you do. As I mentioned earlier, you can check us out on Twitter at Anthem Universe. Of course, check out our YouTube channel from there as well, looking for Anthem Universe. Join the Discord, as I said, be part of the conversation. There's some crazy, awesome stuff happening just in the general chat, even, let alone the lore chat and the other rooms that we've got pumping. Please do stop by, have a chat, shout out, and get to know some people, because remember, man, this game is designed for 4 players, and if you only have 2 or 3, you'll find more. There'll be plenty around across your region, and everything from South Africa to Russia to the Oceania region to North America, South America, Japan. We have people all over in the server right now talking and sharing ideas. So please jump in, make it something special, make it something new for you, and check out conversations and the latest work on Anthem. Guys, I'm going to leave it there. I am Ogaz. It's been an absolute pleasure for this very special, unique take on AnthemCast. I hope you have an awesome week. We'll check in again shortly. As I said, don't forget to check out our special on the Anthem music, which you can check out at YouTube. And of course, you can look the full article at anthemuniverse.com as we break down, assess, and analyze the music of Anthem. Javelins, freelancers, we will see you next. Over the wall.